There is a great and terrible danger in seeing what others do not, and you have been called to it. The world will tell you that you are blessed with vision, with a deeper understanding. But I tell you, this is the very threshold of your greatest trial. To see the reality behind the appearance is to invite the fury of the entire world of illusion. It will demand you conform, it will tempt you with its comforts, and it will try to blind you again. You stand at a precipice. Do you turn back to the safety of the crowd, or do you take the solitary step into the unknown truth? This is not a path of acquiring more knowledge, but of a fiery purification that consumes everything you thought you were. What you are about to receive is not a teaching, but a transmission of a living fire. It will require everything of you, for it is the beginning of the end of your separated self. If you are ready to be stripped bare, to have your eyes opened not to more light, but to the absolute truth that dissolves all shadow, then proceed. But know this, hearing this is a sacred commitment. To seal this in your consciousness, you must act. Let your subscription to this channel be not a passive click, but your sacred vow to walk this path. And in the comments below, mark your presence with the number 11, the symbol of transition and revelation, that I may know you were here and have chosen to see. Let us examine the nature of this solitary burden. It begins not with a grand revelation, but with a quiet, persistent unease. You walk through the marketplace of the world. You sit in meetings. You engage in conversations. And you perceive a fundamental dissonance. While others are debating the arrangement of the furniture, you are acutely aware that the entire house is on fire. This is not a metaphor for worldly catastrophe, but for the inner state of mankind, a state asleep to its own divine origin. Your vision allows you to see the smoke seeping under the doors, the faint tremors in the foundation, and you speak of it. Yet, you are met with polite nods, with dismissive gestures, or with outright confusion. They do not see the smoke, they see only the furniture, and they are deeply invested in its polish and placement. This is the inception of the burden, the crushing weight of a knowledge that cannot be shared through ordinary means. It separates you not by choice or by arrogance, but by the sheer, unassailable fact of your perception. In your daily life, this manifests in moments of profound isolation. You witness a colleague consumed by anxiety over a temporary professional setback, and you see with startling clarity that their turmoil stems from a misidentification. They believe they are the position, the title, the success. You perceive the immortal being trapped within the temporal drama. But you cannot say this. To do so would be to speak a foreign language. You must instead learn to abide in the silence of your own knowing, offering comfort where you can, but carrying the heavier truth alone. This solitude is not the romantic loneliness of a poet. It is the practical, grinding loneliness of a watchman on a tower who sees a distant storm approaching, while the village below continues its festival. The celebration seems real to them, the music, the laughter, the lights. It is all there. And you see it too, but you see through it to the gathering clouds. Your duty is not to stop the festival, but to remain at your post, faithful to the vision, regardless of whether anyone heeds the warning. In your personal relationships, this becomes a delicate dance. A loved one comes to you with a problem, a sickness, a financial lack. The world's solution, and their entire focus, is on manipulating the outer conditions, a new medicine, a different budget. But you see the problem as a shadow cast by an inner state of consciousness. You see that the condition is not the cause, but an effect. Your burden is to know that no outer adjustment will ever bring lasting peace, only a shifting of the shadow. You are compelled to turn within, to address the cause at the level of consciousness, all while the outer person and the entire world demands you simply rearrange the furniture. This is where the burden becomes a fiery purification. The world's indifference and hostility are not its greatest weapons. Its greatest weapon is its temptation. There will be days when the solitude is too heavy, when the vision seems like a curse, and the simple, blind happiness of the crowd appears infinitely more appealing. You will be tempted to dismiss your own sight, to convince yourself that the smoke is just morning mist, that the tremors are just a passing truck. You will be tempted to join the consensus reality, to laugh at its jokes, to chase its prizes, to validate its fears. This is the critical battleground. To succumb is to experience a death more profound than any physical passing. It is the death of your spiritual identity. Therefore, the burden forces upon you a relentless practice of abiding in the unseen. When the medical report speaks one language, you are learning to listen for the silent harmony of eternal life. When the bank account shouts of limitation, you are training your ear to hear the infinite abundance of the divine source. You are, in every moment, making a choice. Do I accept the testimony of the senses, or do I remain faithful to the vision of reality? This is not denial. It is the highest form of affirmation. It is the work of acknowledging only one power. The burden feels solitary because it is the journey of the individual consciousness back to its source, and no one can take that step for you. No teacher, no book, no external authority can grant you the courage to stand on the truth of what you see when all outer evidence contradicts it. This is your Gethsemane, your wilderness experience, repeated daily in 1,000 small ways. It is the price of vision, and it is the very process that forges within you an unshakable foundation, not of belief, but of knowing. It is the fire that burns away the need for external confirmation until all that remains is the pure, solitary, and triumphant I am. This hostility you will face is not a personal vendetta. It is the innate, defensive reaction of a dream when one within it begins to awaken. The world of appearance, the entire construct of material sense, is built upon a foundation of agreement. We have collectively agreed to call a certain collection of shapes and colors a tree, and to invest it with the properties of tree. We have agreed that pieces of paper constitute wealth, and that a title on a door bestows importance. This consensus is a fragile thing, a shared hallucination that requires unanimous, if unconscious, participation to maintain its semblance of reality. When you, through spiritual vision, begin to withdraw your agreement, you do not merely hold a different opinion, you threaten the very fabric of the illusion. You are the one who stands up in the theater and declares the play is not real. The other patrons do not thank you for the insight. They demand you be silent or be removed, for you are shattering the reality they have invested in. This fury manifests not as overt persecution, though it can, but more commonly as a subtle, pervasive resistance that you will feel in your daily affairs. You may find yourself in a conversation where the topic is illness, and the discussion revolves entirely around symptoms, prognoses, and fears. When you gently introduce the concept of a spiritual reality, where wholeness is the eternal fact, you will be met with a wall. It may not be a wall of anger, but of polite incomprehension, a swift change of subject, or a condescending smile that labels you as naive. This is the world's hostility. It cannot hear you because your language is alien to its fundamental premises. Your words are not processed as wisdom, but as static, as noise that disrupts its coherent, albeit limited, frequency. Consider your workplace an environment that operates almost entirely on the principles of the world hierarchy, competition, scarcity, and personal credit. You, having seen something of the divine harmony, may feel guided to act from a place of cooperation, of abundant sharing of ideas, of selfless support for colleagues. The system will not reward this. It will often punish it. You may be passed over for promotion because you did not loudly claim your achievements. Your cooperative nature may be interpreted as a lack of ambition or leadership. This is not a failure of your character. It is the system's immune response, rejecting a foreign body that does not play by its rules of separation and conflict. The world thrives on the I, against you, the us, against them. To operate from the realized truth of one divine life expressing itself is to introduce a virus of unity into a program built on division, and the program will fight back. This dynamic becomes even more acute in your closest relationships. A family member trapped in a narrative of victimhood or lack will come to you for solace. The world's solution, and the one they expect, is to join them in their story, to validate their grievances, to help them strategize within the dream. But your vision compels you to point them toward the truth of their identity as a complete and perfect child of God, untouched by the dramas of the personal history. This will be perceived not as love, but as a profound invalidation of their entire experience. They may accuse you of being cold, unsympathetic, or off in the clouds. This is perhaps the most painful form of the world's hostility, when it comes from those you love, dressed in the garments of hurt and confusion. Your vision has created a chasm that ordinary human affection cannot bridge. For you are speaking from the shore of reality, while they are drowning in the dream. The world will also attack through the temptation to make your vision itself a new commodity, within its own marketplace. It will flatter you, suggesting you write a book, become a famous teacher, and gather followers. It will try to turn your revelation into a system, your inner knowing into a doctrine to be debated and sold. This is its most insidious weapon. The co-opting of the light to serve the purposes of darkness. To resist this, you must maintain the sacred solitude of your burden, remembering that the truth you have seen is not a new set of beliefs to be added to the world's collection, but a fire that intends to consume the entire collection. The world's hostility, therefore, is your greatest spiritual instructor. It constantly refines your discernment, forcing you to distinguish between the pure, unadorned voice of spirit and the countless imitations the world offers. It teaches you to stand firm, not in defiance, but in a quiet, unshakable conviction that needs no outer validation, seeks no outer platform, and fears no outer resistance, for it knows itself to be rooted in the only reality there is. This crucible of purification is not an event you attend. It is the very atmosphere you now breathe. Having chosen to stand in the vision that sets you apart, and having felt the world's resistance as a constant pressure, you now enter the fire itself. This is not a punishment, but a necessary alchemical process. The gold of your true being exists within you, but it is alloyed with the dross of a lifetime of mistaken identity. The belief that you are a physical, mental, and emotional creature subject to the whims of a world of effect. The heat of this crucible is designed for one purpose only, to burn away everything that you are not, until only the pure, indestructible essence of the I Am remains. You will know this fire by its work in your daily life. It ignites in moments of profound personal crisis. A financial security you have relied upon for years suddenly vanishes. A relationship you believed was foundational to your happiness dissolves. A cherished plan for the future collapses into dust. The world sees this as misfortune. You must learn to see it as the sacred fire at work. The flame is not attacking you. It is consuming the idols you have worshipped. It is burning away your faith in the external, your dependency on conditions, your investment in a personal sense of control and ownership. As the forms you clung to turn to ash, the temptation will be to rush in and rebuild, to find a new security, a new relationship, a new plan. But the purification demands that you stand in the emptiness, that you allow the burning to complete its work, that you face the terrifying, liberating truth that you are still conscious, still aware, still being, even when every external prop has been removed. This fire works on a subtler, more persistent level as well. It burns in the quiet moments of introspection, where your own thoughts and emotions become the fuel. You will find yourself recalling a past mistake, and the old, familiar sense of guilt and shame will rise up like a wave. Before your awakening, you might have simply been drowned by it or sought to distract yourself. Now, the fire is present. It forces you to look at that guilt, not to analyze it or justify it, but to feel its heat without identifying with it. You must sit and let it burn, until you realize that this guilt, too, is not your true self. It is a construct, a shadow with no substance apart from the belief you give it. The fire consumes it, leaving behind not a void, but a profound lesson in your eternal innocence as a spiritual being. Your relationships become the crucible's primary furnace. The people closest to you, often without any conscious awareness, will play the roles necessary to trigger your deepest fears and attachments. A loved one will become cold and distant, activating your fear of abandonment. A colleague will take credit for your work, activating your sense of injustice and ego. In these moments, the fire is at its most intense. The old unpurified self screams for retaliation, for withdrawal, for building walls of self-protection. But the vision you carry shows you a different path. You see that the other person is also an instrument in this sacred process, that their action is the very flame meant to burn away your need for external validation, your fragile ego, your belief in being a separate self who can be wronged. To forgive them is not a moral act. It is a spiritual necessity. It is to stop throwing more wood of resentment onto the fire that is meant to liberate you. This purification extends even to your spiritual understanding itself. Concepts that once brought you comfort. Ideas of a God who rewards and punishes, a path that leads to perpetual bliss, a self that becomes spiritually powerful, will themselves be cast into the flames. You will find that your most cherished prayers go unanswered, or are answered in ways that shatter your expectations. This is the fire consuming the form of your belief to reveal the formless reality beneath. It is teaching you to pray without a demand, to listen without an expectation, to abide in a faith that requires no outer evidence. The crucible leaves you with nothing to hold on to, because its entire purpose is to force you to become that which you have been seeking. You are not walking through the fire, you are being remade as the fire itself, a pure, conscious flame of being that cannot be threatened by any appearance, cannot be diminished by any loss, and cannot be defined by any experience. For you are the very consciousness in which all experience appears and dissolves. The relentless fire of purification has a single, ultimate objective, the complete and final dissolution of the illusion of a separate self. This is the great unveiling, the core of the entire journey. Everything you have endured, the solitude, the hostility, the burning away of your external securities, has been to prepare you for this one staggering realization. That you have believed yourself to be the person with a name, a history, a collection of problems and achievements, is not the ultimate reality of your being. It is a temporary construct, a focal point of consciousness that has mistaken itself for the entire ocean. To see what others do not is to eventually see through the very one who is seeing. This is not an abstract philosophy to be debated. It is a palpable shift in the very substance of your daily experience. You are walking down a familiar street, and suddenly, without warning, the sense of being a solid, separate entity enclosed within a bag of skin simply softens. The boundary between the observer and the observed becomes permeable. You see the tree, but there is no longer a stark division between the you seeing and the tree being seen. There is just seeing. A profound silence descends, not as an absence of sound, but as a presence that underlies all things. In that moment, the frantic, chattering persona that worries about its past and future is noticed as a faint echo in the vastness of your true nature. This is not a loss of identity, but the discovery of your actual identity. The one I am, that is the very life, force of the tree, the street, and all that is. This realization dismantles the engine of human suffering at its source. Consider a moment of conflict. Previously, if someone spoke to you with anger, the mechanism of the separate self would spring into immediate action. It would feel attacked, would build a case in its own defense, would experience the heat of resentment and the chill of hurt. It was a solid, reactive thing. Now, with the illusion of separation thinning, the same angry words arise, but they meet no solid object. They pass through you like wind through an open window. You can hear the content of the words. You can understand the other person's pain, but there is no central me for them to stick to and wound. The personal history that would have been triggered. I am always being treated unfairly. This person doesn't respect me. Is seen for what it is, a recorded tape playing in an empty room. You are free to respond from wisdom and compassion, not from the knee-jerk reaction of a defended, fragile self. Your relationship with the world of objects and outcomes is similarly transformed. The separate self is a center of lack, constantly seeking to acquire, to achieve, to become. It believes that a new possession, a new status, a new experience will finally complete it and bring lasting peace. This is the hunger that drives the entire world. But as this sense of a separate center begins to fade, so does its insatiable hunger. You will find yourself in a store, looking at an object you once deeply desired. You can still appreciate its beauty or function, but the compulsive need to own it, to have it define you, is gone. The emptiness it was supposed to fill is no longer there, because you are no longer experienced as an empty vessel. You are the fullness itself. A project at work can be engaged with tremendous energy and care, but the desperate need for it to succeed in order to validate your existence has vanished. Success and failure become simply movements within the dance, not verdicts on your worth. This is the great secret that the world cannot see, that your true self is not in the world, but the world is in yourself. The body, the mind, the personality, the bank account, the relationships. All these are temporary patterns appearing within the infinite, boundless consciousness that you are. To cling to the separate self is to be a wave fighting for its own existence, terrified of the ocean. To see through it is to realize you are the ocean, expressing itself as a wave for a time. The wave has a unique form and function, but its substance, its reality, is the ocean. This understanding does not make you passive or disengaged. It empowers you with a peace and a potency that the separate self could never comprehend. You act, but you are not the actor. You love, but you are not the lover. You live, but you are not the limited life. You are the silent, boundless space in which all action, all love, and all life unfolds, and in this knowing, you are finally, utterly, and eternally free. This truth you are coming to know is not a set of principles to be memorized, nor a philosophy to be understood by the intellect. It is a living fire. It does not inform you, it consumes you. It does not add to your knowledge, it annihilates your ignorance. To encounter this fire is to understand that all your previous spiritual seeking was merely gathering kindling, and now the match has been struck. This is the critical point where the path shifts from learning about God to being consumed by the divine reality itself. You will know this fire by its effect on every comfortable belief you have ever held. You may have held a concept of God as a benevolent father, figure in the sky, a personage who listens to requests and dispenses favors. The living fire will reduce this concept to ashes. It reveals God not as a separate being, but as the very substance of your being, the very consciousness with which you are aware, the very life that animates your form. This is not a comforting idea. It is a terrifying and exhilarating upheaval. It means there is no one to petition, only a presence to surrender into. Your prayer ceases to be a list of requests and becomes a silent, burning immersion in this presence, where no words are necessary because only one will exists. This fire operates directly upon your sensory experience, burning away your belief in the solidity of the world. You look at a table, and your eyes report its solidity, its form. But the inner fire reveals it as a dancing field of energy, a temporary constellation of intelligence held in a specific form by a universal mind. The diagnosis from a doctor, the number in your bank account, the angry word from a stranger. These are all just patterns within the one conscious fabric. The fire does not deny their relative appearance, but it utterly consumes your faith in them as ultimate realities. You can no longer fully believe what your eyes see or your ears hear, because a deeper faculty of knowing has been ignited, one that perceives the underlying unified field of divine consciousness from which all appearances spring. This is where your daily life becomes the furnace. A severe pain appears in the body. The mind, trained by the world, immediately leaps to label it, to fear it, to build a future narrative of suffering around it. But the living fire is present. It does not fight the pain, it envelopes it. It invites you to look directly into the sensation, not as a victim, but as the boundless awareness in which the sensation is arising. You are asked to stop trying to change the appearance and to instead become the infinite space that holds it. This is the fire at work. It burns the tendency to contract around a problem and forces you to expand as the all-embracing consciousness that can never be threatened by any temporary phenomenon within it. The pain may remain for a time, but its power to define your reality is incinerated. Your relationships are also transformed in this blaze. The fire exposes the transactional nature of human love which is based on getting needs met and conditions being fulfilled. It burns through these attachments not to leave you loveless, but to reveal a love that is not personal. This is a love that flows through you, not from you. It is the love of the divine, loving its own expression. You find yourself caring for others without any need for reciprocation, appreciation, or a specific outcome. You can be met with hatred and still feel this impersonal love flowing, because its source is not your personal heart, but the very heart of being. This is deeply unsettling to the world, which understands only the commerce of affection. The living fire is also the great discriminator. It will burn away any spiritual practice that has become a routine, any concept of truth that has become a dogma. You may have a beautiful meditation practice that brings you peace. The fire will, in time, consume even that. It will show you that the peace you sought in meditation was a subtle object, and that your true nature is the peace itself, which requires no technique to attain. It will leave you with no practices to hide behind, no beliefs to cling to, no teacher to follow blindly. You are left alone with the fire itself, which is both the path and the destination, the seeker and the sought. It is a ruthless, purifying, and liberating force that to learn no thing false, and its only purpose is to leave you as what you have always been, pure, conscious, undivided being, knowing itself alone forever. The culmination of this entire journey, from the solitary vision to the consuming fire, rests upon a single, conscious choice. It is not a choice made once, but one that must be made anew in every moment, with every breath, with every perception that arises. This is the choice to abide in reality. All the purification, all the revelation, is for naught if it does not lead to this final, unwavering establishment of consciousness in the truth of what is. The vision was given not as a curious spectacle, but as a new foundation upon which you are commanded to stand, regardless of the storms of appearance that rage against it. To abide is an active, dynamic state of being. It is not a passive resignation or a vague hope. It is the deliberate, moment by moment withdrawal of belief from the testimony of the senses and the reinvestment of that belief in the unseen spiritual reality. You are walking through a world that shouts of lack, limitation, sickness, and conflict, and you are learning to hear, beneath the noise of the eternal, silent hum of omnipresent good. This is your work now. When the body presents a symptom, the world screams, sickness, and demands you accept its diagnosis, its prognosis, its entire narrative of decay. To abide is to consciously turn your attention away from this cacophony and to place it, like an anchor, into the truth of your being as a perfect, spiritual idea, whole and intact in divine mind. You do not fight the appearance. You simply cease to grant it the power of reality. You let the world have its opinion while you remain rooted in God's fact. This conscious choice will be tested in the most mundane arenas of your life. You are in a traffic jam, late for an important meeting. The entire situation, the honking horns, the frantic thoughts, the tension in your muscles, is a collective prayer to the God of chaos and separation. To abide is to recognize this entire scene as a compelling illusion. It is to settle into the silence within the noise and to acknowledge one governing presence, one harmonious divine activity, even here, even now. You may still seek an alternate route, but you do so from a place of peace, not panic, knowing that your true being is never late, never separate, and never in a situation outside of divine control. The circumstance becomes a classroom, and your choice to abide is the lesson you are there to demonstrate. Your relationships become the primary gymnasium for this practice. Someone you trust betrays you. The pain is acute. The evidence of their wrongdoing is overwhelming. The world and every fiber of your unrenewed self cries out for justice, for retribution, for the right to hold onto the hurt. To abide is to make the most difficult choice imaginable, to release the entire personal drama into the fire of truth. It is to see the other not as a villain who has harmed you, but as a fellow consciousness, perhaps asleep to their own nature, acting out a role in the dream. This does not condone the action, but it utterly transfigures your relationship to it. You choose to abide in the truth that only oneself exists, and that within this oneself there can be no ultimate conflict, no permanent separation, no real transgression. You forgive not because you are morally superior, but because you recognize that the offense was against an illusion, the separate you that is being dissolved. You abide as the one self, and in that abiding, the chains of resentment are broken. This is the final surrender of the will of the creature to the will of the Creator. It is the ultimate, "Thy will be done," not as a plea, but as a declaration of an established fact. You are no longer trying to get God to cooperate with your plans for your life. You are abiding in the truth that your life is already, and always has been, the perfect unfolding of the divine plan. When a desire arises, you no longer rush to fulfill it with human effort. You first bring it to the light of abiding. You ask, can this desire be aligned with the one will? Is it born of a sense of lack, or from the overflow of divine completeness? You wait. You listen. And you act only when your action is a natural, harmonious expression of the reality in which you are abiding, not a frantic attempt to escape a perceived unreality. To abide is to end the struggle. It is to come home. It is to sit fully conscious in the kingdom of heaven that has been spread out over the whole face of the earth, while men sleep and do not see it. Your life becomes a living benediction, a silent sermon, not by your doing, but by your sheer, chosen, and unwavering beingness in the midst of the dream.